My name's Hannah, and I've known Katie for about a year now, and we're friends.
Hi, I'm Rallo. I've known Katie for about a year now, and we're really good friends.
Hi, I'm Trevor. I worked with Katie last year.
And Hannah will be filming.
Alright, so these first two people don't need any introduction. That's the Tooth Fairy. Then you have Santa Claus. These are both myths. Now what you have in front of you is the stereotypical housewife. Quiet, demure, passive, content to stay in the house and let the men take charge. That is also a myth. An astonishing amount of what we know is based on fabrications. According to Gerald Jillison of University of Southern California, humans are lied to nearly 200 times a day. However, I believe that the truth is better than any fabrication. These are the sources that I use to support my presentation. Use mollybrown.org, encyclopedia.org, shs.umsystem.edu, history.co.uk, history.denverlibrary.org, and livespotting.com. My name is Katie Fitzpatrick, and I would like to tell y'all about the woman history remembers as the unsinkable Molly Brown. Her youth, her role in the tragedy of the Titanic, and her national role in humanitarian works thereafter. This is Margaret Tobin Brown. Maggie had humble upbringings. She was born to Irish immigrants in Hannibal, Missouri, and her parents had strong progressive beliefs. They put a high value on education, so until she was 13, she was schooled. However, after that, she went to work in the Garth's Tobacco Company to strip tobacco. It was here that she was first exposed to the harsh realities that most everybody except for the social elite was exposed to. Low conditions, low wages, and long hours. However, most everybody in that position dreamed of making fortune. One way of doing this was going west. So Maggie was no different, and she packed up and followed her brother and sister to Leadville, Colorado. Leadville, Colorado is a small town nestled in the Rocky Mountains. Here, Maggie worked in a department store, and she was exposed to the harsh realities of a mining town. She joined the Irish community in the Annunciation Church, and then after witnessing all this, her passion for humanitarian works was sparked. She put her efforts into charity works as well as soup kitchens. Amidst her busy life, Maggie met JJ. After a summer courtship, the two wed. But when the silver crash struck, their future seemed to just be hanging in the balance. However, their first strike of fate, luck, or whatever you want to call it, happened when JJ became a mining superintendent and discovered gold in the Little Johnny mine. Overnight, the Browns became millionaires. The couple, along with their two children, moved to Denver, Colorado, and Margaret dove headfirst into the progressive movement. She founded the Denver's Woman Club, which advocated for children, suffrage, human rights of all kinds. She also had passions for traveling as well as other humanitarian efforts. So this is Margaret when she lived in Denver, and this is her home in Hannibal, Missouri. After 23 years of marriage, JJ and Margaret split up. However, it was because of her strong Catholic views, a divorce wasn't granted, and they just lived separately. She also challenged the status quo by trying to become the first woman in the state senate there in Colorado. She didn't make it, but on her own, she pressed onwards with her passions for humanitarian works and traveling. However, it's the second strike of fate which made her famous. Holding true to her passions of traveling, in early 1912, Margaret found herself in Cairo, Egypt. It was here that she received word that her grandson had fallen ill. She booked the first passage available back to America, which just so happened to be on the ill-fated Titanic. And if you do me a favor and go ahead and scan audience. Thank you. Unknowingly, as she stepped onto this luxurious ship with a first-class ticket, she permanently cemented herself into history. She was known as New Money, but she was allowed all the luxuries that social elite on board the Titanic also were able to have. And just as other passengers, on the night of the crash, she was enjoying her night in the stateroom. This is a quote from herself. "I stretched on the brass bed, at the side of which was a lamp. So completely absorbed in my reading, I gave little thought to the crash that struck at my window overhead and threw me to the floor." She proceeded up to the deck, where she held fellow passengers into rowboat 6 before she joined them. These women rowed for hours, and it is said that Margaret helped keep morale up until they saw the light of the Carpathia. Once on board the Carpathia, she switched into her humanitarian leader role. Her knowledge of many languages allowed her to communicate and console the Titanic survivors that were making their way on board from the lifeboats. She soon came to the realization that many of these people had lost everything: husbands, families, possessions. Once they reached New York, they would have to start all over. So surrounded by destitute souls, she and other members of First Class formed the Survivors Committee. By the time they reached New York City, they'd raised $10,000. It was for these acts, as well as her following acts immediately afterwards, where she waited with these passengers, she was remembered as the Unsinkable Molly Brown, a nickname bestowed on her by gossip columnist Polly Pride. She used this new spotlight to press on with passions that were very near to her. Once she got back to Colorado, she found herself in a position to mediate a tense situation between the Ludlam miners and the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company. The strikers were concerned with below wages, the long hours, and the hazardous conditions which she experienced as youth. So with her assistance, a resolution was found and the end of the radical workers movement in America was reached. She also rented a summer home in Newport, Rhode Island, where she joined the National Women's Trade Union Organization. This was an organization not only held by the social elite, but also by working class women who advocated for 8-hour workdays as well as minimum wage. When she wasn't focused on her humanitarian efforts and traveling, she dabbled in theater as well as historic preservation efforts. But in World War I, when that struck, she turned her focus to relief work in Europe. She received the French Legion of Honor Award for her outstanding citizenship. And then later in that year, 1932, she passed away peacefully in her sleep. After she passed away, people tried their hardest to immortalize the figure that they held in their mind. For the vast majority of people, that meant the Unsinkable Molly Brown. In 1932, Carolyn Bancroft wrote a highly fictional account of her life that was published in a romance magazine. This was turned into a booklet, which was then turned into a Broadway production titled The Unsinkable Molly Brown, followed by a film, and then in 1997, she was portrayed by Kathy Bates in the movie Titanic. So many people were misconstruing the facts of her life that the Brown family cut off communications with historians and reporters and the like. It has only been recently, in the past few years, that they've opened up and become willing to share their ancestors' life. And lucky for us they did, because in this case, the truth is so much better than the fantasy. Margaret Brown was the embodiment of the new woman of the 20s, free, liberated, and self-sufficient. Through the experiences of her youth, her role in the tragedy of the Titanic, and her efficient use of the limelight thereafter, she cemented herself in history as an inspiring, trailblazing woman. And it's only appropriate to conclude with words of wisdom from the legend herself. It isn't who you are, nor what you have, but what you are that counts.